Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance, where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard Hot Dance charts in immaculate detail, with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. To say this week felt less chaotic than I expected would be an understatement. I mean, I was expecting a few FKA Twig songs to drop off, and while that did happen somewhat, a lot of them stuck around, which meant that we not only had an underperformance from Years and Years, thank God, we also got a slew of new arrivals and barely any returns from the dropout list last week. It feels like the FKA Twigs album bomb just paved the way for new songs to sweep in and replace the old. Whether or not that's a good thing, however, it remains up in the air. But before we discuss that, our top 10. With Cold Up PNAU remix by Elton John and Dua Lipa continuing to hold steady on sales, gained a huge streaming boost this week, and even if the radio is slowly fading away a bit, this will hold the top spot for a while. Peppers by Farruko, meanwhile, at number 2 has very strong streaming, sales are rebounding, but the radio is falling. It's not going anywhere. Do It To It by AAoD featuring Cherish, meanwhile, has radio gaining on board more than ever, on top of great streaming. If the sales weren't so low, this would be a lot bigger than it is right now. However, outside that, we also got a pretty notable amount of movement in the top 10, starting with The Motto by Tiesto and Ava Max rebounding big to number 4, with radio growing strong and streaming seriously holding this up. I told y'all this was going to rebound. The biggest surprise was that it was this quick. This pushed down When I'm Gone by Alesso and Katy Perry to number 5, even though that song's getting big on radio and has great sales, just not enough to make up for the weak streaming for now. Moth to a Flame by Swedish House Mafia on the weekend, however, was hit harder, being forced down to number 6 on collapsing radio and sales, even if the streaming is as strong as ever. The next few songs remain static, with El Incomprendido by Farruko, Victor Cardenas and DJ Adoni on number 7 growing big on streaming, with radio slowly getting on board even if the sales aren't there yet. I Feel Good by Pitbull featuring Anthony Watts and DJ White Shadow relying on a huge sales boost as the radio falls off with this. And Where Are You Now by Lost Frequencies and Callum Scott at number 9 growing more on radio as streaming slowly gains with it. However, thanks to a certain song falling off the charts entirely, we got a new return to the top 10 this week. Tell It To My Heart by Medusa featuring Hosier. Radio and sales are on board, streaming is growing, I'm so goddamn happy this is back in the top 10. Let's hope it continues up, it's a great song. On the opposite end, however, our falls and fall-offs this week, mostly in the latter category were FKA Twig songs as expected, but along with them we also lost In The Ghetto by J Balvin and Skrillex, and thankfully, Howdy Love by Cheat Codes, Lee Bryce and Lindsay L. Thank God that song's not being a hit. It's flopping hard and it won't make the year-end list. We've been saved, yes! Anyways, our falls list is equally as predictable, mostly being FKA Twigs losing hard off the album bomb last week. Puppy Bones with Shy Girl fell to 49, Honda with Pasteloof collapsed to 48, Careless with Daniel Caesar only fell 8 spots to 39. Interesting. Meta Angel lost to 37, Oh My Love dropped to 34, Ride the Dragon plummeted to 30. Outside of that, Gassed Up by Zed's Dead and Substronics featuring Floyd and lost hard yet again to 43, thank God. Forget About Me by Aluna, Diplo and Durante takes an expected bump to 27 off the debut last week, as does Love Brand New by Bob Moses, sadly not looking like it's going to be the huge hit, being knocked down to 50, even if radio is on board with this one in a big way. Finally, that leaves Family by David Guetta, BB Rexa, Ty Dolla $ign and Boogie with the Hoodie at 36. Man, this song is nosediving after FKA Twigs album bomb. It really was the starting point for its collapse. Shows that people really don't want this. Can't blame them. But of course, the big story this week came in our jumps and comebacks. Well, just the former, because Sweet Talker by Years and Years and Galantis came back to 45 off the album boost and I don't expect it to last. Man, that album underperformed. The jumps, meanwhile, were a much different story, where you can easily split them up into the lower half of the charts, rebounding to fill in the gaps from the FKA Twigs album bomb dissipation, and the top half making use of several collapses and fall-offs to rebound to some pretty notable positions. In the latter category, we had Follow Me by Sam Felton and Rita Ora rebounding big to 17, Chasing Stars by Alesso, Marshmello and James Bay at somehow surviving at 20, Sahara by Henson and reaching a new peak at 21, I Wish by Joel Corey and Mabel getting a huge jump to 23, and somehow Broken in All the Right Places by Lost Kings featuring Mod Sun at 24 of the return last week. Not sure if this will be here, but it's at least interesting to see a Lost Kings song actually survive nowadays given their track record. Outside of that, How Will I Know by Whitney Houston and Clean Bandit unfortunately rebounds to 29. On My Knees by Rufus Du Sol thankfully gets a rebound to 32. Undeniable by Kygo and X Ambassadors gains a second win to 33. And Move Your Body by Own Boss featuring Sevek gains a slight boost to 44 off its return, as it looks like streaming is really on board with this one. However, the one song I want to highlight here is actually Intimidated by Kate Renata featuring her at 15. This song has survived way longer than I think anyone expected, especially given K-Tronada's charts history. It's by far his biggest song in the dance charts today and has completely clinched the year-end spot, which makes me so goddamn happy because the song is legit excellent and K-Tronada is well deserving of that big hit it's been waiting years to obtain. Now we move on to a relatively moderate list of new arrivals. Unfortunately, starting out with... I'm ready for your night call. I mean, to be fair to Years and Years, this is probably one of the best tracks from that album, but it still holds many of the extreme issues the album has. Ollie's inflection gets a bit grating at times. The production is fine, I guess, but nothing outstanding for the genre. While the hook is pretty nice, it's all centered around waiting on a dial tone for a night call from Ollie's love interest, and it's just not remotely interesting or special. The album has many of these issues, but this is a song where the lyrics just don't try at all. I mean, it's fine, I guess. Generally okay, better than the majority of the album, but I have no real interest in coming back to this song. Sorry. When the stars go out, 'cause I'm feeling so hot right now. This love will never touch the ground. We'll be shining when the lights go down. Honestly, who wanted this? I mean, I get the people who would have seen a potential between a Galantis and Dubs collab. They both dabble in house styles, and Dubs could provide a really nice bassline to support Galantis' cleaner production. But why do they need to bring in Cody Simpson for this? Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Cody Simpson is a pop singer who had a minor run in the early 2010s in Australia, generally underperformed in the second half of the decade, and is now more well known for winning the Masked Singer and competing in several Australian swimming competitions. Anyways, here's the song, and wow, this isn't good at all. The production is the biggest problem here, featuring some potential with that build up and those bass heavy stabs, but all gets wasted on some of the most boring and bland drops of both artists' careers, with barely any groove to speak of. And Cody Simpson, if you're gonna try and sell this sort of love-struck dance cut, can you really sound like you care when you're singing here? His very limited vocal range and lack of power on the mic really makes this song a chore to get through. I mean, I've heard worse from both Dubs and Galantis, but yeah, this isn't good at all. Let's move on. We'll be dancing till Nirvana, moonlight leads the way. I hear 1,000 songs, but you're the only melody. If we're dancing till tomorrow. At this point, I really don't know how to feel about Sigala. I mean, I really like Lasting Lover, and he's had a great history of singles like Lullaby, Came In For Love and Wish You Well. But at the same time, his singles between Lasting Lover and this have not been very good, especially You For Me, which is getting worse with every listen. That being said, I was still hopeful for this, and turns out this is actually pretty okay. It's actually nice that this was the song I was discussing right after When the Lights Go Down, because the difference in personality and production quality is drastic. Firstly, the uncredited female vocals are really solid, providing way more passionate delivery with some really nice vocal effects that complement the vibe quite well. I really like the production here too, with a vocal melody that sounds eerily familiar alongside some really nice synth and pianos that build into the energetic house drops quite well. It reminds me of Sigala's 2017 and 2018 house material, which I'm absolutely not complaining about because that's one of his best periods. So yeah, this isn't anything unique or mind-blowing, but for a simple fun house song, this works for me. Damn good song. It's always odd seeing Fred again on the dance charts, mainly because he seems like the type of artist you'd see dominating the UK but rarely get that level of attention given his unique house sound. When I saw this charting, I was legit surprised, especially given that it features Romy, who many of you may know is 1/3 of the band The XX, who I absolutely love. You should check them out. So with that in place, I was really looking forward to this, and yeah, this is absolutely great. It's definitely an odd approach with the bass heavy banging percussion being complemented mainly by just Romy's distinct and beautiful vocals for the first half, as the piano slowly floats around in the background. It's a song that really builds itself up for that fantastic payoff in the second half, where the layers of synth slowly come in and the song picks up so much bombast that works perfectly off of Fred again and HAAi's style of production. Honestly, there's not really a whole lot to complain about here. Maybe the song does feel a bit long at nearly 5 minutes, but that's a nitpick. It really is a great song. Shame it probably won't last because let's face it, this is the kind of stuff the United States just doesn't hold to as much as the Brits, but I'm glad to see you here. Really good stuff.
Traveling in a freighter combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies.
Now on the the other hand, I'm not surprised that all this charted here. It's been blowing up worldwide for weeks now, and really, given that the original Men at Work song is pretty much the unofficial musical anthem of Australia, I'm really surprised that this didn't get conceived earlier. What's actually interesting is that this is the first drum and bass song to hit the charts in the last few years, which blows my mind given how many smash hits the UK pushes out in this genre. Anyways, how's the remix? Well, okay, I get why people don't like this. The time shifting on Colin has distinct hollering vocals, which are actually a re-recording done by the man himself, hence the credit, does become pretty noticeable the more the song goes, and his voice does feel a bit too far back, especially when the drops hit. But otherwise, I found this really likable. The neuro drum and bass production with that awesome bass playing against the ever iconic flutes makes the song really hit with some great verses and some great suspense before the drops impact and features such a strong groove. It's a classic case of drum and bass that knows when to pull its punches, and it really does work in creating a fun remix that keeps the tone of the original intact. Yes, it's definitely not for everybody, but for me, I really like this. I really hope it does well stateside, if only because you don't see drum and bass like this charting on average. So yeah, good remix. Check this out.
I'm lonely, and I need to be with someone.
This surprised me. Now, of course, given that Love Regenerator is an alias of Calvin Harris, I shouldn't be surprised that singles under this name chart high on average. But what surprised me were the guests. I mean, Riva Starr is an Italian producer best known for a bunch of remixes in the early 2000s, but the name that really surprised me was Sananda Maitreya, an R&B singer who I'm most familiar for appearing on the Avalanche's We Will Always Love You and one of the best tracks there. So I had hope for this, and wow, this is fantastic. What surprised me was that this led more towards progressive house or trance, with those really smooth and pretty synths going off against the fantastic production. With those really smooth and pretty synths going off against the fantastic percussion that builds into some really clean and well done drops. Sananda also sounds great here too. He always has such a unique vocal style in any song he's on, and here is no different. His high vocal tone really complements the mix of this song really well, creating a nice balance that gives us a lot of dimensionality. Unsurprisingly, this kicks ass. Excellent song, I'll support this. Has anyone else been feeling this weird sense that Grimes is going to go completely experimental on her next album? I mean, given the experiences she had with dating Elon Musk and the general approach to her last album, Misanthropocene, I have genuinely no clue what she's going to try next. I mean, even if the lyrics were bad, I actually didn't mind Player of Games for some really nice production. So to see her go towards more funk house here certainly drew my attention. And honestly though, I like this a fair bit. And no, it's not just because of the production with that terrific bass line going against the bouncy percussion and Grimes' really pretty vocals. The real surprise here came with the lyrics, where Grimes clearly makes a parallel to the manga and anime Death Note, primarily using the Shinigami eyes in the context to draw men who betrayed her and caused them death. Supposedly. I mean, a pretty grim picture, but one that Grimes herself actually doesn't really agree with. In reality, it's more just a playful song with Grimes messing around with the imagery of Death Note to create a really fun, catchy tune. Honestly, that personality really does shine through here. It takes an already good song and puts it into almost great territory. I quite like this. Here's to hoping it surges next week and becomes a pretty consistent hit. So that wraps up on a pretty expectedly quiet week, but one where the quality really picked up towards the higher end of the debuts. Best is going to Lonely by Love Regenerator, Riva Starr and Sananda Maitreya for just being an excellent progressive house song, although the honourable runner-up was a lot harder. Now I'm gonna go with Lights Out by Fred again, Romy and HAAi, but honestly Grimes could have gotten this in any other week. It was really close. For the worst, I mean, it's obviously going to When the Lights Go Down by Dubs, Galantis and Cody Simpson, but the dishonourable mention is going to Nightcore by Years and Years. I'm sorry, look, it's not the worst from that album, but it's still not very good. Next week, honestly I could see more fallout with FKA Twigs with some other songs dropping away. Hopefully we can at least get some returns, or who knows, we might get some more surprise debuts including that big Chainsmokers comeback. We'll have to see. But yeah, that's all for this episode of An Analysis of Dance. See you next time.